Ladies and gentlemen, the fire is not the end. It's the beginning of truth reclaiming its place in a world built on illusions. When people hear the phrase burning down the government, they imagine chaos, destruction, and fear. But in reality, the true disaster has already been unfolding quietly for decades. The fire isn't the threat, it's the cure. It's the cleansing force that exposes the rot hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and corruption. For too long, we've lived in a system that pretends stability is the same thing as strength, that printing money is the same as creating wealth, and that government control equals security. But when the foundations are built on lies, collapse isn't tragedy, it's transformation. The fire represents truth, raw and unapologetic. It burns away the false sense of comfort that comes from debt-driven prosperity. Every borrowed dollar, every artificial stimulus, every manipulated interest rate, it's all dry timber waiting for a spark. And now that spark has been lit. But instead of panic, this moment demands clarity. The fire doesn't destroy what's real. It destroys what was never sustainable to begin with. Gold doesn't melt in the fire. It shines brighter. Integrity doesn't fade. It's revealed. The same is true for individuals. When the system shakes, those grounded in truth rise above the smoke. You cannot rebuild until you've been willing to let the old structure fall. We've been taught to fear the collapse because we've mistaken dependency for safety. People say, if the government fails, everything fails. That's not true. When the system breaks, it creates space for innovation, accountability, and freedom. Every major transformation in history was born out of destruction. The American Revolution didn't come from comfort. It came from confrontation. Every real recovery starts when people face the uncomfortable truth. The fire is not our enemy. It's our mirror. It reflects how far we've drifted from reality. This is the hook most people miss. The fire exposes truth, not just burns lies. When the economy crashes, when markets tumble, when the politicians scream crisis, it's not because truth failed. It's because lies finally ran out of room. That moment, as terrifying as it feels, is where freedom begins. It's the point where people stop believing that the government can do for them what they refuse to do for themselves. It's where financial independence, real savings, and honest work become the only currency that matters. We have to remember that the greatest danger isn't the fire, it's denial. Denial keeps people clinging to a broken system, believing that more spending, more debt, more intervention will fix what's already collapsing. The truth is, the system is not designed to sustain prosperity. It's designed to sustain itself. Every bailout, every deficit, every regulation is fuel feeding the fire. And when that fire grows uncontrollable, don't curse it, understand it. It's the natural correction of an economy that's been artificially inflated for too long. The fire doesn't discriminate. It tests everything. It reveals which ideas are solid and which are hollow. It's easy to believe in prosperity when the printing presses are running, when the markets are high, when credit is cheap. But when the flames rise, only what's real survives. That's where the opportunity lies. Because after the smoke clears, after the illusions crumble, those who stayed grounded in truth, those who saved, who prepared, who built on real value, become the architects of the new system. So don't see the fire as something to fear. See it as a necessary reckoning. The system isn't burning down because someone set it on fire. It's burning because it was never built to last. The fire is a teacher, a purifier, and ultimately a liberator. It reminds us that stability built on deceit is fragility in disguise. When the flames rise higher, stand firm, because when the smoke clears, the truth will remain standing, and those who understood it before the fire began will be the ones leading what comes next. Real power has never lived in the walls of Washington or behind the doors of the Federal Reserve. It lives in the hands of individuals who understand value, responsibility, and truth. The illusion that politicians control prosperity is one of the greatest deceptions of our time. They want you to believe that your success depends on their decisions, that your future is shaped by their policies, and that your freedom is granted by their permission. But the truth is the government doesn't create wealth. It consumes it. It doesn't inspire innovation. It regulates it. And it doesn't lead the economy. It follows it, always a step behind reality, reacting instead of creating. Every time you wait for a political savior to fix the system, you surrender a piece of your own power. The hook most people miss is this: dependence is the modern form of control. The more you rely on government promises, the less control you have over your own destiny. They promise to protect your job, but they destroy industries with regulation. They promise affordable living, but their spending drives inflation higher. They promise stability, but their deficits guarantee collapse. Real power begins the moment you stop believing that politicians can give you what only personal discipline can achieve. For years, Americans have been taught to cheer for the next election like it's a sporting event: blue team or red team, liberal or conservative, as if one will magically fix the economy while the other ruins it. But both sides are playing the same game, buying votes with borrowed money. The national debt climbs, the dollar weakens, and the middle class pays the price. The people who hold real power are not the ones making speeches on Capitol Hill. They're the ones who understand how money truly works. They're the ones saving when others spend, investing when others panic, and preparing when others trust the system blindly. You can't outsource responsibility and expect freedom. Real financial strength comes from self-reliance, earning, saving, and protecting what's yours. The government can print dollars, but it can't print value. It can create programs, but it can't create productivity. And while it can redistribute wealth, it can never replace the drive that creates it in the first place. The system wants you to be dependent because dependency breeds obedience. When you rely on government handouts or manipulated interest rates, you're not free. You're trapped in a cycle designed to keep you compliant and distracted. The truth is, politicians need crises. Without them, they lose relevance. They need you to believe they can fix inflation, stabilize markets, and guarantee your retirement. But every solution they sell creates a bigger problem. Every bailout rewards recklessness. Every stimulus bill steals from the future. The real revolution isn't political, it's personal. It begins when individuals take back the power that was always theirs, the power to think critically, act rationally, and invest wisely. The power to stop consuming illusions and start building something real. You must become your own central bank, your own safety net, your own engine of growth. Build real assets, develop real skills, and anchor your life in principles that don't depend on political cycles. History has proven it time and again: when governments fall, economies adapt. When currencies collapse, value finds new forms. But when individuals lose faith in themselves, civilizations crumble. The government is not your foundation. It's a structure built on shifting sand. Your foundation must be stronger than that. If freedom begins where dependency ends, the moment you stop waiting for policy changes or political miracles, you become unstoppable. Real power is the ability to survive and thrive regardless of who's in office or what crisis dominates the headlines. It's the courage to stand firm when the crowd panics, to think clearly when the noise grows loud, and to act on truth when others cling to comfort. You don't need permission from Washington to succeed. You just need conviction, preparation, and the will to be independent in a world that profits from your dependence. When systems begin to crumble, most people see danger, the wise see opportunity. Collapse has always been nature's most honest reset button. It strips away illusions, destroys false confidence, and reveals the truth of what's solid and what's not. The idea that everything falling apart is a disaster is one of the greatest lies sold to the public. The real tragedy is not the collapse itself, it's being unprepared when it happens. Every empire, every market, every economy that has risen too far on false promises eventually meets the same fate or reckoning. But the ones who understand how this cycle works don't just survive the fall, they use it to rise higher than ever before. Crisis is a mirror, not a monster. It shows you what you've built your life on. If your foundation is fake, if your wealth is built on speculation, your confidence on government guarantees, and your comfort on cheap credit, then yes, the collapse feels catastrophic. But if you've built your foundation on real value, on tangible assets, on discipline and truth, then every collapse becomes a clearing, a rare chance to rebuild in a stronger, cleaner, more honest way. The people who thrive in chaos are those who stopped fearing it long ago. They understood that stability is an illusion when it's based on debt, and volatility is an ally when it reveals what's real. Throughout history, the greatest fortunes have been made not during times of expansion, but during times of collapse. When the world panics, prices fall, and assets that once seemed unreachable become opportunities for those who stayed liquid, calm, and focused. While others are blinded by fear, the prepared move strategically. They buy when others sell. They invest when others retreat. They understand that pain in the market is not the end. It's the transfer of wealth from the emotional to the rational. Every crisis hands the reins to those who can stay objective while everyone else loses control. But opportunity in collapse isn't just financial, it's personal. When the system breaks, it forces people to confront themselves. It exposes how much of their security was borrowed, how much of their confidence depended on the system's stability. In that moment, you either crumble with it or rise above it. You can't control the collapse of a currency, the corruption of a government, or the incompetence of policymakers. But you can control your response. You can prepare by building resilience in your mind, your money, and your values. The person who stands firm when everything else falls apart becomes a symbol of strength in a world of fear. It's easy to believe you're strong when the markets are booming and the economy feels safe. But real strength is proven only when the system fails you and you refuse to fall with it. That's where the opportunity lies, in showing yourself and the world that you don't need artificial stability to stand tall. Collapse is not chaos for the prepared, it's clarity. It wipes away the noise and leaves only what's real. It forces people to stop pretending and start producing. It separates those who live on borrowed time from those who create real value. The truth is, collapse is not a punishment, it's a reset. It's what happens when reality finally catches up with denial. It's the economy's believe of purging excess, just like the body fights infection. The longer we resist it, the worse the eventual fever. But those who embrace it, who understand its rhythm, come out stronger. They know that when the old world burns down, it's not the end of prosperity. It's the beginning of genuine wealth. The ashes of failure are the soil in which real success grows. The hook to remember is that every collapse carries within it the seeds of the next great rise. The question isn't whether the system will fall, it's whether you'll be ready to rise when it does. The prepared don't just survive, they lead. They rebuild on truth while others are still searching through the rubble of deception. Collapse is the ultimate test of conviction. It's where the weak flee, the fearful freeze, and the strong find freedom. Courage has never been about shouting the loudest. It's about standing firm when the truth makes everyone else uncomfortable. In an age where deception is dressed as news and conformity is rewarded as virtue, questioning the narrative has become an act of rebellion. The system thrives on silence. It feeds off the obedience of people too afraid to think differently. But real progress has never come from the comfortable crowd. It has always been born from those willing to challenge the illusion. When you question what you're told, when you refuse to swallow the official story without evidence, you're not being cynical, you're being conscious. That is the first spark of real power. They don't fear your anger, they fear your awareness. Governments, central banks, and the media don't need to suppress everyone. They just need to convince you to suppress yourself. They create narratives so polished and repeated that questioning them feels dangerous. But the danger isn't in asking questions, it's in accepting answers that don't make sense. Once you surrender your right to doubt, you've already surrendered your freedom. Courage begins the moment you start thinking independently, even if your voice trembles, even if you stand alone. Look at history. Every major shift began with someone refusing to believe what they were told. The truth is rarely popular in its infancy. Galileo was condemned for challenging the science of his time. Economists who warned of the 2008 crisis were mocked until the system collapsed. Every truth that threatens power is labeled as heresy before it becomes common sense. The world tells you to stay quiet, stay safe, stay in line. But the price of silence is servitude. When you choose comfort over courage, you choose to let others define reality for you. Courage is not reckless, it's responsible. It doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means demanding proof for what you accept. It's refusing to be manipulated by fear, propaganda, or political theater. Today, the narrative isn't just about controlling what you think, it's about controlling how you think. They don't want independent minds, they want predictable reactions. That's why courage is so rare and so powerful. It breaks the algorithm of control. The person who questions calmly, intelligently, and persistently is far more dangerous to the system than any protest in the streets. You have to understand that truth doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs people brave enough to speak it. When you start questioning the narrative, you will face resistance. You'll be called extreme, paranoid, or unpatriotic. That's how the system defends itself, not with facts, but with labels. But remember, ridicule is the first sign you're onto something real. They don't mock what doesn't threaten them. The stronger the backlash, the closer you are to exposing what they fear most: accountability. And that's the essence of courage. Not aggression, not rebellion for its own sake, but a relentless pursuit of reality, no matter how inconvenient it is to those in power. When you look around and see chaos, division, and noise, understand that confusion is a strategy. A confused population doesn't question authority, it clings to it. The antidote is clarity, seeing through the narrative, not by emotion, but by logic. Ask yourself, who benefits from your confusion? Who gains when you're divided? distracted, and afraid. Courage is choosing to see the pattern behind the noise. It's connecting the dots when the system insists they're unrelated. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. That's when you become uncontrollable, not because you're loud, but because you're aware. The hook is simple yet powerful truth. Doesn't fear scrutiny, only lies do. If an idea can't withstand questions, it deserves to collapse. Courage isn't about tearing everything down. It's about refusing to live under illusions. The moment you start thinking for yourself, the moment you stop letting headlines shape your beliefs, you become the one thing the system can't manage: a free thinker. And in a world built on deception, a free thinker is the most powerful and dangerous person alive. Rebuilding a broken system is not about chaos or destruction. It's about rediscovering the principles that made strength possible in the first place. When a nation, an economy, or an institution collapses, it's not because it ran out of resources. It's because it ran out of integrity. Every crisis is a reflection of moral decay long before it becomes a financial one. We've built a culture where quick profits are valued more than lasting progress, where speculation replaces productivity, and where truth is traded for political convenience. Rebuilding requires character, the kind of discipline and honesty that doesn't bend to trends or temptations. It's not glamorous, it's not fast, and it's not easy, but it's the only way anything real ever lasts. The hook most people miss is that you can't rebuild on the same foundation that caused the collapse. You can't fix corruption with more regulation. You can't solve debt with more borrowing. And you can't restore trust with more lies. The system we live in thrives on illusions, not integrity. It rewards short-term gain over long-term vision. But character doesn't chase applause. It builds quietly, consistently, through truth and resilience. When the fake collapses, character is what remains standing. It's the bedrock on which real prosperity, real freedom, and real stability are rebuilt. When people talk about burning down the system, what they really mean is removing the rot that's been covered by layers of propaganda and bureaucracy. The government, the markets, even society itself, these are reflections of the values we uphold. If the values are weak, the structures are doomed to fail. Rebuilding begins with individuals who refuse to participate in the lie. It starts with those who choose hard work over entitlement, honesty over convenience, and substance over spectacle. That's how civilizations rise again, through people who hold themselves to higher standards, even when the system rewards mediocrity. Character doesn't just repair systems, it transforms them. The most powerful revolutions don't happen with riots or slogans. They happen in silence, when individuals begin to live by principles again. When you save instead of spend, when you create instead of consume, when you tell the truth instead of what's popular, you're rebuilding the very foundation the world needs. It's the invisible work that fuels every visible recovery. And make no mistake, rebuilding is work. It requires patience when everyone else demands instant results. It demands consistency when others look for shortcuts. It's about planting seeds you may never see bloom, but knowing they will one day shade those who come after you. The reason so many systems fail is because they try to rebuild without reforming. They replace the faces, not the values. They write new rules, but keep the same mindset. That's why history repeats itself, because we keep trying to decorate the ruins instead of clearing the rubble. True rebuilding is not cosmetic, it's moral. It's not about bigger budgets or stronger governments. It's about stronger people. A system built on greed collapses under its own weight, but a system built on honesty can weather any storm. And in times of collapse, the people with character become the architects of the new order. Prosperity without principle is temporary, but rebuilding with integrity is eternal. We've lived too long in a world that confuses noise for leadership and manipulation for intelligence. But when the noise fades and the dust settles, what endures are the quiet virtues, discipline, patience, and truth. Rebuilding the future doesn't require more power, it requires more principle. When individuals rediscover their strength and live by timeless values, they don't just rebuild a nation, they redefine it. The new structure won't be sustained by politics or policies. It will be anchored by people who understand that real power comes not from control, but from character. The new America will not be built in Washington. It will be built in the minds and hands of individuals who refuse to be deceived, who refuse to surrender their future to political illusion. Real change never comes from government decrees or political speeches. It comes from people who think, act, and live differently. The world you inherit is not defined by the leaders you elect, but by the standards you uphold. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix what's broken and start taking responsibility for your own actions, that's when the foundation of a new nation begins to form. It starts with one person deciding that independence is more valuable than convenience, that truth is more important than approval, and that personal freedom outweighs collective delusion. The hook that most people miss is that the revolution has never been political. It's always been personal. The government can change faces, but it cannot change your mindset. If your thinking remains dependent, no new law, no new leader, no new slogan will make you free. Freedom isn't granted, it's earned. It's the result of responsibility, discipline, and courage to stand apart from a system that feeds on compliance. The new America will not rise from protests or ballots alone. It will rise from individuals who embody the very values that the current system abandoned. Every time you choose truth over propaganda, savings over debt, productivity over dependency, you are casting a vote for the America that still deserves to exist. We've been conditioned to believe that power flows from the top down, but history tells a different story. Every empire that has fallen was rebuilt not by politicians, but by ordinary people who refuse to accept decline as destiny. Farmers, workers, entrepreneurs, thinkers, those who took responsibility instead of refuge in excuses. That's where renewal begins, not in committee rooms or campaign rallies, but in homes, businesses, and communities that decide to operate on principles again. The system doesn't fear elections. It fears individuals who no longer need it to survive. Because when people become self-reliant, the illusion of control collapses. You can see it happening already. People are waking up to the realization that the promises of government are bankrupt. The idea that your future depends on someone else's leadership is an outdated lie. The real future belongs to those who build value when others make noise, who create when others complain, and who think when others simply follow. The collapse of the old system isn't the end. It's the clearing of space for something stronger, something more honest. The new America will be defined not by policies, but by principles, not by power, but by productivity, not by control, but by character. This isn't just about economics. It's about identity. The new America must reject the culture of entitlement and rediscover the culture of effort. It must celebrate creation instead of consumption, ownership instead of dependency, and truth instead of comfort. The politicians can only take as much power as people are willing to give. When individuals start thinking independently, the system loses its grip. That's why education, awareness, and critical thinking are acts of rebellion today. When you understand how the system manipulates, you no longer participate in your own deception. You start to operate in a way that's immune to fear and propaganda. That's how real change happens, quietly, steadily, through individuals who become too strong to be controlled. The new America doesn't start with the government. It starts with you. Every choice you make either feeds the corruption or fights it. Every dollar you save, every skill you build, every truth you speak contributes to a nation worth inheriting. The people waiting for leaders will always be led, but those who lead themselves will rebuild a freer, stronger world. The collapse of the old system isn't the end of the American story. It's the turning point. And those who prepare, who think, who stand firm in truth will not only survive what's coming, they will define what comes next.